This is the Pick Six podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, you might realize that it's also Halloween. Sunday Night Super Friends, of course. And I don't like to do this because some of us will get off on tangents, but I'll give you each 10 seconds to tell us who you are if people are driving around wondering what Breech and Brinson are dressed up as. Breech, I'll let you go first because I think people watching know who Brinson is, and he's actually gone as Will Brinson.
Well, I can't tell you who I am because we don't talk about this person, but he's from Encanto. Boom! My daughter is Maribel, and I'm.
We don't talk about boo. No.
Brinson, I got to take a shot now.
Okay, take a shot.
And Brinson, you are a golfer. Are you a specific golfer? Or are you Will Brinson on a Saturday afternoon? Who are you?
I just walked through the house and tried to find something that would qualify as a costume since it's Halloween. Breech goes all out.
Yeah,
and I just grab stuff.
Breeches.
I'm dressed as myself.
He's Will Mickelson.
Are you?
Wickelson.
I like your Joe Rogan outfit, Wilson.
I'm flashing the guns.
Jeez, dude.
If you're watching, no, it's the angle of the camera.
God.
I appreciate
The angle of the camera. It's the steroids, Wilson.
it. Is the
I just felt like wearing sunglasses during the podcast, to be perfectly honest.
By the way, you missed an easy layup. I'm going as Robert Saleh. All right, let's go.
Well,
That's Will Brinson.
You're really more like going like Brian Dable based on your time management since you got off HQ. Hey!
It was a whole thing. That, of course, is Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson. This is the Sunday Night Super Friends Week 8 Recap 2023 edition. Just to remind you folks who have forgotten, or if you're listening for the first time, there's a plan in case you're new. We're going to hit our top 10 takeaways from Week 8. The biggest plays, the best players, some missed calls, a lot of Joe Burrow returning to form for John Breech.
Yes.
So that's going to be fun. First things first, give us a thumbs up if you're watching on the old YouTubes at NFL CBS. And of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's get to it. Since they changed the schedule to 17 games, we are now officially 47% of the way through the 2023 season. And Sunday, we're talking about children's Halloween costumes. It's a children's book here. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day for a lot of quarterbacks around the league. Kirk Cousins may have torn his Achilles, which would mean his year is over. Kenny Pickett, Matthew Stafford, Tyrod Taylor all gave way to their respective backups. Mr. Trubisky, Brett Rippon, and Tommy DeVito, if you keep the score at home. So, Breech, let's start in Minnesota. 2 weeks ago, we were all talking about how the Vikings were going to have a fire sale, whether it was Danielle Hunter or the aforementioned Kirk Cousins getting traded. Then they beat the 49ers on Monday Night Football, that game no one saw coming. Worked over the the Packers today on Sunday. Now they're at 4-4. They're at 500. 2-0 in the NFC North, best record in the NFC North. They're currently on the inside looking out as a playoff team. Jaron Hall is the backup quarterback, the rookie out of BYU. Nick Mullins is on the practice squad. So if you're Kevin O'Connell, what is the plan going forward if you're the Minnesota Vikings and are going to be without Kirk Cousins?
Well, I don't think it can be Jaron Hall. I think you need someone. Obviously, he's in the system. He's the guy that knows it best. So I'm not sure that Kevin O'Connell is going to want to move on. But it's not just these last 2 games that the Vikings won, because they beat the Bears a few weeks ago. So they've now won 3 games in a row. They're right in the thick of the playoff race. You can't just throw this season away, I don't think. You can't say Kirk Cousins is injured, we're done. Because I'm sure before the game started on Sunday, before you kick off against the Packers, you're kind of looking at the next few weeks. They were playing the Falcons in week 9, the Saints in week 10, the Broncos in week 11, the Bears in week 12 before week 13 bye. Those are all very winnable games if Kirk Cousins is your quarterback, where you could conceivably get to 8-4. Now, you probably don't feel that way, but here is what I would do if I am Kevin O'Connell. These are the top 4 guys I would go after. Number 1, Carson Wentz. That is only because if you make a trade, you're going to have to give something up. So I'm probably targeting the guy that I can get in free agency, and I don't have to give anything up. And I don't think he's a huge step down from what's available out there. So rather than give up draft compensation, I'm going to look to free agency first. After that, I'm going with my boy, Andrew Gregory Dalton at number 2, Jameis Winston at number 3, and Teddy Bridgewater at number 4. But of course, you'd have to trade for Dalton, Winston, or Bridgewater. But I do think the Vikings have to do something. The thing is, they barely have 24 hours to figure this out because the trade deadline's Tuesday at 4 p.m. So, Brinson, what do you think? Should they make a trade? Should they sign Carson Wentz? Should they just roll with whatever's on their roster, snap the ball to Jordan Addison because he's been crushing it?
No, I think there's a couple other options that you could look at that'll be a little more cost effective. Colt McCoy spent several years with Kevin O'Connell in Washington, so he knows the system too. He's a free agent. You can go out and get him. He would make a lot of sense. Case Keenum is third on the depth chart in Houston. And remember, he's played in Minnesota, Minneapolis Miracle, so maybe he could make sense if you wanted to trade for him. And then they also have Nick Mullins, who's on IR. It has one more week that he's got to sit out before he's eligible to come back from IR, plus Sean Mannion on their practice squad. I think some amalgamation of those guys, since it's Halloween, like some Frankenstein monster that Kevin O'Connell patches together where, as you point out, Breech, you are currently, the 7 seed in the NFC. You're 4-4. Playing all these games except for today, right? The first time you're not in this 1-score game, you're up by 2 scores, of course. When Kirk Cousins gets hurt, if you read the quotes out of Minnesota, man, I mean, I know that we've all sort of dunked on Kirby for years, but Kevin O'Connell was suggesting that this was his best professional season in his career. Kirk Cousins, that is. Garrett Bradbury, my boy, was like, dude, it's devastating when he's not out there. Kirk Cousins had never missed a game because of injury. He sat out a week 17, I guess, game when the Vikings had clinched a playoff spot. And then in 2021, he missed a game because of COVID, but he's never missed a game because of injury in his career. He is one of the most reliably healthy guys in the NFL, and he was playing really good football. I think he was second in the NFL top 3 in the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And as you said, Breech, the schedule was easy. 4 games going to the bye at the Falcons versus the Saints, at the Broncos, and versus the Bears. Now, the Falcons are sort of up and down. The Bears are playing a little bit better at times. Depends on when Justin Fields is back, and then Denver's looked better the last couple of weeks. But I think the real dagger here is that the Vikings defense has been playing great football the last couple of weeks. And I mentioned this earlier in the week on the podcast, but Harrison Smith was on the Pat McAfee show and just talking about how even as a veteran that it took him a while to sort of pick up Brian Flores' defense. And there's a lot of new stuff that he was sort of learning and that all these guys were sort of learning. And now they feel like they're starting to click. And it's just such a dagger because, we're all sort of crapping on this Minnesota team after that slow start. And maybe, the weekend NFC with a healthy Kirk Cousins and the defense is playing well and Justin Jefferson coming back, you feel like they could have made a run. It's tough to see now, but apparently just a 0.9 difference in terms of their win total, according to our sports side projections, which is kind of mind blowing.
Can I ask Wilson one thing? Wilson?
Yes.
Should Kevin O'Connell call up his former teammate, Tom Brady?
The Vikings, no, I don't think Tom would be down with that. Also the ownership stuff that you've talked about in the past with the Raiders that may
I still don't think he's that hadn't been cleared yet. I don't think.
Well, and real quick, that was a fun fact. Kevin O'Connell got drafted in 2008 and spent his rookie with the Patriots. Tom Brady.
I thought you were going to say that Kevin O'Connell was going to actually suit up. This does stink though, because I said this a couple times over the course of the afternoon and late evening. Kirk Cousins is the best player on this team, and I say that fully understanding that Justin Jefferson's also on this team, but Jordan Addison has stepped up with Jordan Jefferson being down.
Yeah.
And while there's been some loss in production, obviously, Jordan Addison has taken on that role. There is no Jordan Addison to take over for Kirk Cousins. And I think Nick Mullins makes sense in terms of being on the roster, but this is a huge step down no matter who it is, whether it's inside or outside the organization, and it absolutely sucks because to Brinson's point, this is the best Kirk Cousins has played, and I've actually said this numerous times over the first 2 months that there's been no reason to call him Kirby, which is what we used to call him when he would throw the predictable fourth quarter interception, usually in prime time. He beat the crap out of the 49ers in prime time. And then he's, curb stomped the Packers team. So the Vikings are a winner today. And they are actually probably the biggest loser, sadly, because of Kirk Cousins' situation. I do want to say, another quarterback that left the game, and Brinson, I'll come to you because this is your dude. Matthew Stafford, probably the toughest person on planet Earth. I don't understand why he bangs his hand twice and then you throw him a swing pass on a 2-point conversion. Maybe Sean McVay is treating him much the same way Kevin Stefanski was treating Baker Mayfield towards the end of his career. But he came out, Brett Rippon came in. That game had long been decided. It was over at halftime. This team struggled last week against the Steelers. They obviously lost against the Cowboys. What's the prognosis for the Rams going forward with all these injuries?
I think it's a problem, and I can see guys with some. I don't have a black eye. I'm just throwing something on for Halloween purposes. We established that at the top of the show. Try and show up on time if you're going to complain about what we're wearing. Nobody's asking about breaches.
All right, stay focused. Stay focused.
Pull over.
Talk about Matthew Stafford.
I know. I am.
This is going on a rant against the commenters. This is classic Brinson.
No, I
love the Halloween shows.
Stafford.
Back to Matthew Stafford.
It wasn't even banging against the helmet. His thumb went inside somebody's helmet, or like going forward, like went inside the face mask, and you could tell he's just like, "Oh my god!" And they throw him that pass on the 2-point conversion. Dude is just tough as nails. And if it's like you look at Justin Herbert playing on Sunday night, and he's got the left injury to his left hand. It's been bothering him, but he's been working through it, and he's been adjusting to it, et cetera, et cetera. Stafford, as tough as he is, it's going to be impossible to like be able to play with a right thumb injury, but just because of like how much you need that to grip and control and all of that. And I'm sure he'll try and fight through it, but it's like I'm concerned that this is going to cause major issues for the Rams offense and Matthew Stafford's accuracy and his ability to get the ball out and deliver on time. And I mean, if you're the Rams, I'm not saying the Rams are like dead or anything like that, but this is certainly a tough spot when you're 3-5 now, because you lose that game, you get blown out by Dallas. You're at Green Bay. It's a must-win game at Green Bay in Week 9 before your bye. Then you got 2 straight divisional games against the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Like if you can beat Green Bay and you get to the bye, and then Stafford's fine after the bye, then the Rams can get right back in the mix here in the NFC.
All right, yeah. So Kenny Pickett also went down, replaced by Mr. Trubisky. Mr. Trubisky came in and threw an interception. Predictable. Tyrod Taylor went out. Tommy DeVito came in. Syracuse's own, by way of Illinois. He and Tyrod combined for negative 47 yards. It was slightly better than that, but it wasn't much better. They lost in overtime to the Jets. Here we go. Breech, I'm going to come to you because here's my talking point. I'm going to lump the Chiefs and the Broncos.
We just lose Wilson?
Oh, God. I guess we got to move on, Wilson. Wilson's slowing the show up with his bad internet.
Oh, my goodness.
Goes together in with the 49ers, and then afterwards we'll spend the rest of the time giving the Sean Payton's Broncos. Should we worry about them? That's part A. Part B is should we?
All right, Wilson is frozen.
Well, are you Breech? Are you more worried about the Chiefs losing to the Broncos or Ryan Wilson's internet issues?
I am more worried about Wilson's internet issues. The crazy thing is that the Chiefs made sure to leak out before this game started that Patrick Mahomes has the flu or has been very sick. And if we
even got it blamed on his family, like his children and his wife.
That's what, hey, you have kids, they get you sick. And so I think the thing with the Chiefs, though, is that's why I don't really think anything about this loss per se. Obviously, you don't want to lose to the Broncos. That's not a great loss at all. But when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, he played like he was sick. I mean, I'm sure some people thought, hey, he's going to have a Michael Jordan flu game. Well, this was the opposite of that because he certainly did not have a Michael Jordan flu game. He was flustered. The Broncos had him on the run. He couldn't run around as well as he would have liked. He threw a couple picks, and the offense just looked totally out of sync, and I just attribute that to Mahomes being sick. So if they show up to Germany on Sunday and Patrick Mahomes still has the flu, well, first, that's bad that he's had the flu for a week. They probably need to look into that first. But if he shows up to Germany and they struggle against the Dolphins, then I think you start to have problems. But as far as I'm concerned, not worried about the Chiefs at all yet. This is just put the asterisk there with Mahomes being sick.
Chiefs minus 2.5, by the way, against the Dolphins early line there on that Sunday morning game in Germany. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like a sickness thing. I know that Mike McDaniel said that the Dolphins are going to leave Monday to arrive Tuesday in Germany, I believe. And so like that's getting there. That's getting there early. I'll be very curious what the Chiefs do because you've got this situation where you do have a sick. Like I don't put a whole. I mean, like Mahomes was playing like he looked like he was sick. Like he looked like he was like he wasn't accurate. He wasn't decisive most of the time. He looked like he was sort of lethargic and look, it's fine. The Chiefs are now 6-2. I think it's almost like a bigger story that the Broncos managed to beat the Chiefs in that streak You end Patrick Mahomes was 25-0 in his career against teams that were 2 games or more below 500. He was 16-0. I heard this. I think this is real. He was 16-0 in road division games in his career until this thing, and then he
second longest streak in NFL history.
I'm assuming Brady's the other one. Brady's the longest.
Joe Montana.
Oh, interesting. Good call.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's so like I think Denver has in a very big way, and Russ looked all right. Russ threw a couple nice passes there, a couple touchdown passes, and I think that generally speaking, the Broncos have done a pretty good job of getting off the mat. I mean, when they got that 70 bomb dropped on them by the Dolphins, it was like, oh man, this is they're a historically bad defense, and now it's sort of like people
are ready to fire Sean Payton.
Yeah, people wanted Sean Payton on the hot seat. Right, exactly. Maybe a more concerning situation, Breech. The San Francisco 49ers. I feel free to gloat. Your Bengals taking care of business. 4-3 now after beating the Niners in pretty impressive fashion. Joe Burrow looks to be 100% coming out of the bye. They got Buffalo on Sunday night, and like they beat Buffalo and they're 5-3, and suddenly they might be the best team in football. All of a like out of nowhere when we thought they might be dead. And meanwhile, the 49ers, who we were all calling the best team in football, do they have, Breech, a Brock Purdy problem?
I do think they do. The one thing I'll say about the Bengals really quickly, because obviously I do have to gloat, is that, man, our panic level was at 8.5 when they were 0-2, and now Joe Burrow's healthy. Now they're 4-1 in their past 5 games. And look, there was one play in the first quarter, I think maybe the Bengals' first possession. It was 3rd and 10 for the Bengals. Joe Burrow got hit like 7 different times, and if he had his injured calf, he would have gone down in a second. Play is over, but instead he scrambled out, made a 10-yard completion, got the first down, and right there, it was game over. It just felt like old Joe Burrow's back. This is the guy the Bengals needed all year, and you could really see the difference of what happens when Joe Burrow's able to extend plays. Is the Bengals' offense is just so much better, and we saw that with just his scrambling ability. I mean, he had 43 yards rushing against the 49ers when he had, I think, 1 scramble in the first 2 weeks of the season because he was afraid to run on his bad calf. As for Brock Purdy, I do think you have to be a little bit worried if you're a 49ers fan. I think one of the things that we found out is that, look, his kryptonite right now is that he is not good when the 49ers are tied or trailing in the second half, and especially bad in the fourth quarter specifically. We have a graphic up if you're watching on YouTube where in games where Brock Purdy and the 49ers are trailing or tied in the second half, Purdy has 3 touchdowns compared to 7 interceptions. His passer rating, 72.2. When the 49ers are leading, he has 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and his passer rating is 129.5. So he's a completely different quarterback. And the thing here is that the 49ers are so reliant, not even on game script, but I mean, Purdy is on the very high end of a game manager. I mean, that's what Kyle Shanahan wants. But when you're trailing, the game managing's out. You have to make plays to get your team back in it. And Purdy has not shown that he's able to do that. And now we're on a 3-game losing streak. Brinson, are you concerned?
Yeah, very concerned. I think, too, Breech, to your point and to that graphics point, with Purdy, have this situation where it's not just him and his struggles when the Niners are trailing. It's also Kyle Shanahan having to call certain plays. Like Kyle Shanahan's playbook, when he's got a lead, he gives him the ability to call this stuff that you're running the football because you're trying to, you've got a lead, and you're running the clock out, and you're trying to get downhill on teams and keep the clock moving. And then you can use your play action off of that. When you're trailing by 2 scores against an aggressive Bengals defense, and Louis Anarumo's been over the past several years one of the absolute best defensive coordinators at making in-game adjustments and adjusting to what offenses are doing. And when you're in that situation, you're trailing against a Lou Anarumo defense, it's just really, really tough to call those plays for a guy like Brock Purdy, who is, as you point out, a high-end game manager. Wilson, I'm curious. One, I know that you mentioned Joe Burrow was the second leading rusher on HQ. You mentioned this, the second leading rusher on the Bengals team. And so thoughts on Burrow, who I believe you listed as your big winner on HQ with Joe Musso before the show. And then 2, panic level on Brock Purdy.
I'll start with Brock Purdy. I I think we're seeing passive aggressive Breech about Brock Purdy, and I get it. Breech is happy.
Wait, what? Why would he be passive aggressive about Brock Purdy? I'm just saying that he's lost 3 straight games, and a lot of it's been because he's turning the ball over, Wilson.
So I see that old Harry's putting the graphic back up. Thanks,
Harry.
Harry
made the point too in the chat about the concussion thing too, and I heard Tim Hasselback real briefly right before we hopped on the podcast. It's like the NFL stopped letting players. Purdy's been the first guy, but like to come back from this from a concussion suffered like the week before or during the week, etc. And like Tim Hasselback noted that you do have to be like thinking quick. You have to be thinking quickly to be on your toes, and like you need to be sharp headed and your mind is racing when you're a quarterback out there. And so maybe that is a situation for that the 49ers should have thought about. And maybe they should have played Sam Darnold.
So last week, those 2 interceptions came after the concussion. So, and before that, he had actually played pretty well those first 3 quarters. And you can argue about the throws and who was at fault. He threw the interception, so he has to own those, and that lost to Minnesota. The Jermaine Pratt play was a fantastic play. I'm not going to put that on Purdy. Logan Wilson made a fantastic play. Terrible throw. But Tony Romo actually talked about this on telecast. It looked like Logan Wilson was going to go in the other direction, and then he sort of did the old 180 on him and pulled the fast one. All those are his interceptions. He has to own them. I don't think he is playing to the point where Kyle Shanahan should be concerned. Now, whether I'm based on just what my eyes have told me, Sam Darnold would have started if Kyle Shanahan didn't think that Brock Purdy couldn't do it. And Brock Purdy made some pretty good throws in this game as well. As for Joe Burrow, Breech, I don't know if you saw this, but the most efficient quarterback in Bengals history, surpassing someone named Ken Anderson, one of my favorite players growing up, along with Jim Breech, of course, and Carson Palmer. 28-32, 283, 3 touchdowns. You mentioned the rushing, second leading rushing. And by the way, we'll mention this, Breech. Breech, I'll ask you this quickly, and then we can move on. But the Bengals have struggled running the ball all year. Joe Mixon got going, and of course, Joe Burrow did his part. Do you have to feel a little better about the balance now that we've seen on this offense, especially against that 49ers defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wondered where this balance was when Joe Burrow was actually hurt. I mean, that's when they should have been running the ball. The Bengals running numbers, half the reason they've been down is because they just don't run the ball. They weren't running the ball. And one of the reasons they did that is because Joe Burrow had to take every snap out of shotgun while he was injured. And that became an issue with the run game. So I didn't think the Bengals run game was bad in the first few games because it was actually bad. It was just because of the way the offense had to be run due to Burrow's injury. I mean, that injury was ruining everything. It was causing havoc. And so now everything's back to normal. And I think they will be good going forward.
Your happiness, your life, so happy. Cincinnati chili, everything.
All right. Let's go to our nation's capital, where it looked like Ron Rivera, Eric Bieniemy, Sam Howell were going to pull the upset. Instead, all we got was the old push failure. Looked like Jason Kelce didn't get the ball into Jalen hurts his hands down in the red zone. Washington recovered. That was one of the early on. That Washington looked good. That was a late highlight for Washington. This thing started to sour as perhaps we thought they may. Where are we, Brinson, on the Eagles? Because I feel better about the Chiefs than I do about the 49ers. I feel better about the Eagles than I do about the 49ers. But I don't feel great about the Eagles right now.
Well, I don't know that I'm like panicking on the Eagles quite yet. For whatever reason, these 2 Commanders games have just been close. Like the Commanders have just sort of had the Eagles number, and we're like, well, the Eagles passing game is really struggling. And then they go out and they have last week, and the passing game looks really good. And then Jalen Hurts goes 29 or 38 for 319, 4 touchdowns, and AJ Brown catches 2, Devontae Smith catches 1, Julio Jones gets 1 on a red zone target. Like, I don't know. The passing game was pretty awesome on Sunday, and credit to Sam Howell. 39 of 52. I can't believe they asked him to throw 52 times, 397 yards and 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers: Jahan Dotson, Jamison Crowder, Terry McLaurin, and Logan Thomas. I mean, this is just sort of a divisional game. You know, it's the second time these 2 teams have matched up. Surprising that you score that many points, because usually the second divisional game, you tend to see lower scoring outcomes because the 2 teams sort of have time to adjust. But I think to me, the Eagles just keep finding ways to win in a fashion like the Niners aren't finding ways to win, right? They lose those 3 games, and you know that like this passing game for the Eagles can be elite, and it's gotten going the last 2 weeks. So not too much of a concern on Philly. I think it's very possible that our early assertion that there were X number of elite teams in the NFL, maybe those teams, the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Niners, Bills, Bengals, Ravens, I don't know, like whoever else you want to know, Dolphins, like maybe there's not nearly as much separation from these elite, quote unquote, elite teams and the rest of the pack.
Well, I think the lesson is that we shouldn't overreact each week. And Breech, I'll give you this stat,
And
you
yes,
can take it wherever you want to. 6th straight game that Arthur Juan Brown Jr., known as AJ Brown, has had at least 125 or more receiving yards. He has 100 fewer receiving yards. He has 2,200 receiving yards since he arrived via trade. The Titans team since that same span has 2,300 receiving yards.
Yeah, I mean, he arguably had the catch of the year when he had that one-handed touchdown kind of in the corner. I don't even know how he caught it. And that's the thing, is that AJ Brown makes Jalen Hurts look good this year, where when you have a receiver who can make these acrobatic catches where that's an incomplete pass most of the time. No, with AJ Brown, it's a touchdown. It's really been unbelievable because I've been watching Jalen Hurts. He still looks injured. He's playing like he looks injured. And I mean, he only ran for 6 yards in this game, and he just wasn't looking to take off. And the thought is, well, he didn't need to because he was throwing so well. He threw for 319 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he even looked uncomfortable throwing it. And like Brinson said, this could just be a case where the Commanders kind of match up well with the Eagles because they always seem to be in the game. They beat them. They beat them once last year. And then obviously when these two teams played earlier in the season, went into overtime. So these two teams just play tight games, and the Eagles could not get a pass rush on Sam Howell is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL this year, on pace to be the most sacked quarterback in NFL history, and the freaking Eagles only sacked him 1 time. So it's just unbelievable to see things like that. And the one thing I will say about the failed tush push is that it really feels like the Eagles are playing 4D chess, and the rest of the NFL is over here in a corner playing like Boggle, where they're just so far ahead because we saw them. Sure, there's a failed tush push. Oh, but did you see the fake tush push with the sweep for the easiest touchdown in the history of the world? Now they're running fake tush pushes that you have to defend against. So you can't cram everybody into the middle because they might do the same thing to you. And now if you're spread out, that's going to be the easiest yard ever for them to get. Eagles are just they're 7-1. They have the best record. I think they're the best team in the NFC. Easy, maybe the NFL. Right.
By the way, if you see me smiling for the rest of the podcast, you're wondering what is Brinson smiling about. I can't stop. Somebody asked, "Is Breech dressed up as Pickle Rick?" I can't stop laughing at the idea of you actually being dressed up as Pickle Rick from Rick and Morty. Too good. Too good.
All right. We'll think about that over the break. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about a team we mentioned briefly a moment ago in the Cowboys, and we'll talk about the best quarterback in the NFL right now, Will Levis, right after this.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Breech, I'll ask you first. I think Mike McCarthy probably feels some vindication after moving on from Kellen Moore. This team looks legit. 4 20-point wins in the first 7 games for the first time since 1969 for the Cowboys. 4th win by 20-plus points this season. Coming into this game, by the way, the Chargers were Kellen Moore's OC before they whooped up on the Bears. They were averaging 19.3 points per game in their last 3 games. So a disparity there in terms of the points being scored. Dak Prescott looks to be in his Dak Prescott best form. CD Lamb was doing his best Arthur Juan Brown Jr. imitation. He went absolutely off. The Rams were overpowered early. They were down 33-3 at one point. Are the Cowboys? You just mentioned the Eagles. I feel like the Cowboys are making some noise in the NFC, and they're not better than the Eagles, but I don't think they're as far behind as we probably thought they were a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Cowboys, though, is that you rarely see this in the NFL anymore, is that they're just so much better at home. They're like the one team in the NFL where home field advantage actually means something. I think the stat is that they've won all of their home games by at least 20 points, and the first team to do that in their first 3 home games since the Steelers in 2007. So you're talking about it's been a long time since a team has been this dominant at home. You put them on the road, they lose the Arizona Cardinals. They get smoked by the 49ers. So just because of losses like that, it really doesn't want to. I don't feel comfortable putting them in the upper tier with the Eagles. I still think they're in tier 2. I still think they're in the conversation for top 3 teams in the NFC, probably top 5 in NFL, says Breechbot. But
that's pretty good.
I cannot put them in that top tier just yet. Just they need to go out and win a road game. But this was an amazing win. And for Dak Prescott to kind of bounce back, because I feel like he is the most beleaguered quarterback in the NFL. People will talk trash about Dak Prescott whenever if he doesn't play an A- game, it could be B-level game. He just gets trashed on social media. Cowboys fans hate him right away. Let's go find someone else. 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 6 incompletions. He looked fantastic. And if he keeps playing like this, I mean, maybe they get to at least the NFC Championship game for the first time since 1995. But yeah, I do, Wilson, I think what you said about getting rid of Kellen Moore, that McCarthy seems to be becoming much more comfortable, and this offense looks awesome.
Yeah, and it is fair to say, all right, look, Jerry wanted McCarthy to keep Kellen Moore. That was the offense that Dak was used to running, and now when you switch play callers like that, and the head coach is taking over the play calling, even if he's been there for a few years, I mean, that's really more of like an offensive schematic switch than it is, and the style of play calling and what to expect. Like, that's a bigger transition, I think, than maybe we gave it credit for. And there's plenty of examples of Mike McCarthy having success as a play caller in Green Bay, of course. I think the one thing about the Cowboys, you see this game where you have you have an early pass from Dak, you got a pick 6, you got a punt block for a safety. CeeDee Lamb career game in this one, and just like the Rams couldn't really get it going. Matthew Stafford, of course, got injured, and the Cowboys just overpowered him. And it's, for me, the one hang up I have with what Breech is sort of basically the same thing Breech said. It's like, yeah, they have a bunch of these 20-point wins, but it's like, have they beaten it? Like, you look at him, you're like, all right, you lost to the Cardinals, though, and then you just got drubbed by the 49ers. And granted, in the 3 weeks since then, that loss doesn't look as bad, or it looks worse. I'm not even sure which one. What's the wins over Wilson number, the point spread? I know what it is. I'm curious what you think, Wilson. The point spread for Cowboys at Eagles in week 9, 425 game, presumably featuring Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhardt on Fox.
I'm trying to meld the wins over Wilson with the actual line. I feel like a plus 3.5 feels about the neighborhood.
My Eagles -3 is the correct answer. So good call.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh. So let me back up a little bit.
I kind of love the Eagles there, honestly.
Okay, let's back up. I want to ask you this as you were going through what you. By the way, I don't know if you talked about it while my internet was freaking out here, but
we probably did.
The Seahawks are number 1. Seahawks are number 1 in the NFC West. As we
did not talk about that,
which is fantastic. And I bring that up because I'm looking at the standings here. So are you taking Philly's number 1? So you're taking Philly over Dallas. Are you taking Seattle over Dallas neutral field?
I think it'd be really close.
Breech?
Well, see, when I say I'm not putting the Cowboys in the top tier, if Philly and Dallas were playing in Dallas, I would pick Dallas. But if they're playing on a neutral field, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. So
is Jalen Hurts healthy?
Yeah, he's of course he is. He's always healthy. Detroit or Dallas?
You're saying the elite teams in the NFC is just Philly right now, right?
Breech?
I think Dallas, like I said, is close to the conversation. I don't quite have them up in tier 1, but I think Detroit, there's elite teams.
All right. Well, I'll end on this. Dallas or San Francisco right now, as both teams are currently constituted. Because San Francisco is a 6th seed, which is bonkers to say out loud.
I can't comment. San Francisco beat them 42-10. It's just
okay. All right. No one wants to have any answers, which is weird. I'm all in on Dallas right now. I apologize to Kirk Cousins earlier this year. I think I'm apologizing to Mike McCarthy because it just feels like the old timer. He's not old, but he's been around the block a little bit. He got run out of Green Bay by Aaron Rodgers. He had to have his tail between his legs, and he went to PFF for a year. And then we made fun of him when he came back and wasn't really doing the analytic stuff. And he's doing it his way now, and his way is sort of working. Breech, you're right. It works more at home than it does on the road.
He took the scenic route to get there.
But I feel like he's there, and I feel better about the Cowboys then I
Mike
felt
McCarthy's gonna tear his Achilles next week on the sideline.
Oh, gosh. By the way, also you may have mentioned this, maybe you didn't, but it's sort of weird that the player that the Jets were reportedly everyone wanted them to trade for also suffered the same injury as the guy they had who they thought was going to save their season, Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, which is two crappy ways to end their campaigns, but something that sort of stuck out to me. All right, so the Cowboys showed up today. Are they the real Cowboys? Breech is uncertain. I think it's Brinson maybe uncertain. I'm all in on the Cow. I'm taking over Breech spot on the Cowboys bandwagon.
Can't believe that.
All right, Brinson.
Robot Ryan is back. The Cowboys.
William Levis the third. Just made that up. 4 touchdowns. By the way, without looking, Brinson, I'll ask you, how many touchdowns does Ryan Tannehill have this year through the air?
2. We mentioned on the broadcast several times. He had 2.
He got doubled up by old Will Levis there. He had 4. The first touchdown was a great throw to D-Hop. The second one was a little shallow there that D-Hop had to make a pretty tough catch on, but whatever, it counts. 2 other touchdowns were down the field. They were pretty wide open. But again, credit to Will Levis. Absolutely balled out. I'm actually happy for him. And I told Pete this. Pete Prisco has been on Will Levis for what feels like years now. I said, Pete, I need you to quit talking to me about Will Levis because I want him to do well. But you make me hate people that I don't want to hate.
100%, dude. It is.
So
I'm like, they're like cutting to Will Levis throwing bombs. I'm like, Pete is going to be insufferable.
Yeah, he makes it worse on people that you want to pull for. But go ahead. Talk about what Will Levis did and what this means perhaps for the long-term future of this franchise.
I mean, look, I think that what's weird is like Levis was behind Malik Willis in the preseason and in the offseason and was clearly the number 3 quarterback. And he gets a first start. They bring in Willis on the first series, I think on either 3rd or 4th down. He fumbles. And so then Levis decides to start throwing bombs. And he's like what? I mean, you're the draft guru, but I mean, I feel like the sort of the overarching viewpoint of Will Levis was like, this guy's got a cannon, more accurate than Anthony Richardson, but needs to work on the short yardage accuracy, can certainly push the ball downfield. And then DeAndre Hopkins looked like old school DeAndre Hopkins. Now you could have definitely called offensive pass interference on the first one.
That's okay. He hadn't scored a touchdown all year.
What's that?
He hadn't scored a touchdown all year. He hadn't scored a touchdown all year. Let him have his moment.
Well, he got 3 on Sunday. And like, I think that it's fascinating how something like this, and we'll see how long this Levis thing can keep going. But I mean, look, Will Levis is rumored to go number 1 overall. He was like minus 200 to go number 1 overall at one point during the draft process.
I can tell you a quick. Sorry to interrupt. Let me tell you this quick story though. After day 1, I talked to some people that knew such things. Day 1 of the draft. So day 2, Will Levis is yet to be drafted. He gets drafted 33rd overall, the second pick of the second round. And I heard from a pretty reliable source that the Colts at number 4 were thinking it was either going to be AR5 or Will Levis. Will Levis very easily could have gone 4th overall.
Ursay was making them take a quarterback.
So, right. And I think they took the right quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Obviously he's hurt, but anyway, so it's not like he was going to be a 2nd round pick. I had heard also that Will Levis's camp, quote unquote, was concerned that he might slip, and he did slip because he got by 4, but don't be confused. He had every chance to be a 1st round pick.
Yeah. The issue was there were not a ton of teams desperate for a quarterback. Tennessee had
Aaron Rodgers situation.
Yeah, and there were 3 other guys that got drafted too, right? Except, back then it was like just him and Alex Smith. And Levis slipped, and the Titans liked him. There was rumors the Titans would trade up, further up in the 1st round to get Levis because they liked him. He's a Mike Vrabel type of guy. Pete Prisco, we don't like when Pete is right. Nobody likes that. But he also has been, he knows football. He's kind of been pretty good spot on quarterbacks lately. He nailed Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, 2 quarterbacks with like a similar like big arm, controversial type of skill set, quarterbacks that he's an alpha, got fire in his belly. And if Levis is the guy, and let's just hold, let's pause it a little bit and let's see how he does, moving forward over the next few weeks, because there's not a ton to work with. Although it does sound like Hopkins and now Derrick Henry won't be traded, which is a huge plus if you're Will Levis. If he's the guy, this changes everything about the Titans, who look like they might be in a free fall to tank for for Caleb Williams or Drake May.
Well, yeah, I don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. Breech, let me ask you quickly before we move on, because you are a Nashville correspondent. What is the temperature on Will Levis after this performance, if you've been out and about on town with your pickle suit on? And number two, what's going to happen Thursday night when Will Levis has to go to Pittsburgh and beat the crap out of the Steelers without?
Well, the temperature is that everyone loves him. And the answer to question number two is that no one is going to love him after Thursday night. Look, this felt like Will Levis said, we have this great receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm just going to chuck up a couple balls to him. Because you look at...
Not hard.
Exactly. And maybe Ryan Tannehill needs to take some notes from the rookie quarterback. Because you look at Levis did the rest of the game. He threw for 110 yards when he threw to any receiver not named DeAndre Hopkins. Mike Tomlin's a smart coach. The Steelers have a good defense. What are they going to do? You know what? Let's make sure this guy doesn't throw it to DeAndre Hopkins, and let's see how he plays then. And so I do think that Levis is going to get he's going to struggle against the Steelers defense. Maybe he throws a couple long bombs, but I think the most interesting, and not to kind of go down another rabbit hole here, but do the Falcons have a QB issue here? I mean, I know that Desmond Ridder didn't play in the second half due to a concussion, but let's not forget, in the first half, the Falcons did absolutely nothing. They scored 3 points. They totaled 89 yards. Taylor Heineke plays the second half, brings them back in the game. They totaled 253 yards, and he was moving the ball up and down the field. If you're Arthur Smith, you have to at least consider letting Heineke have another start, maybe?
Well, Heineke didn't have a single start yet.
Or let him start a game.
And I'm not saying that he shouldn't consider it. I'm just telling you what I think Arthur Smith is going to do, which is keep starting Desmond Ridder. He said after the game, Des was not pulled for performance purposes or reasons. It was because he didn't feel like he was right out there, that he'd suffered what they thought might be a concussion. He was went into the concussion protocol, was evaluated, was cleared, and went back out there. And Arthur Smith just didn't feel like he was right. Now, I'm not saying he won't change his mind later this week. And I'm not saying they don't have a problem. I'm just saying I think Arthur Smith is all in on Desmond Ridder.
By the way, just shave the beard. You could be Arthur Smith for Halloween. All right, let's go to the Chargers. Yeah, that's pretty good. Where prior to Sunday night's whooping of the Chicago Bears, Justin Herbert last 3 games, 4 touchdowns. Yay, 4 interceptions. A boo. Also mentioned they had been averaging 19.3 points a game until this 30-burger they dropped on the Bears. Brinson, I'll ask you, should we feel good about the Chargers winning what felt like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, should be a get-right game? But by the time the game rolled around, it felt like a trap game. Like you didn't know what was going to happen. The fact that they got up early, no surprise. The fact that they didn't blow it late is a huge surprise. By the way, coming into this game, the only team worse than them in the AFC in that conference was the New England Patriots. That's how far this team has fallen. Brandon Staley had the weight of the world on his shoulders. I think he feels a little better now. Are the Chargers a team not necessarily to be reckoned with in the same breath as, say, the Bengals? But I feel like, if nothing else, they won a game in the NFL. That's a positive, right?
Yeah, they handled a bad Bears team with Secret Bagent Man. And if people think that we were high on Tyler Bagent, it's more like
Tyson.
High on the nickname. Secret. What is his name? I keep saying Tyler. It's
Secret
Tyson, like Mike Tyson.
Tyson Bagent. Look, see, Secret Bagent Man. The Chargers blew him out. The Chargers are now, along with the Raiders, Titans, and Texans, 3-4, and just a game out of a playoff spot. The AFC, this sort of the wild card spots here. You got Buffalo at 5-3, Pittsburgh and Cleveland at 4-3, the Jets and Cincinnati right there on the outside looking in because of tiebreakers, and then those 3 teams at 3 or 4 teams at 3-4, excuse me, in the mix. And then you have the 3-5 Colts and the Broncos. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out. And the Chargers have by far the biggest upside of all those teams below that are 3 or 4 or worse. They have Justin Herbert, who is incredibly talented. They have a ton of receivers, like dudes coming out of the woodwork. Even when you lose Mike Williams for the season, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, they had who's the guy that scored the touchdown tonight that nobody rostered? Donald Parham's like 6'8", 275, and can like move like a wide receiver. They have Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Winfield, or just Asante Samuel Jr. Like they got dudes on that team. Austin Eckler, when fully healthy, makes that offense go. And yeah, if the Chargers can get out of their own way, they are absolutely a contender and a thing to be reckoned with. I just don't know if they can actually do that.
Well, and to Brinson's point real quick, saying that Austin Eckler, when he's healthy, that's what makes the Chargers offense go. I think that there's so much truth to that. And coming back from his injury, this is his third game back. And the 2 prior games, he was averaging just 54 yards from scrimmage per game. The Chargers not going to win games with Austin Eckler averaging 54 yards from scrimmage. And then tonight, boom, he comes out, has 123 yards and a touchdown. And that's what they need from him. If he's putting up numbers like that, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be able to crush bad teams, beat good teams, and be competitive with the great teams. So I think this team took a huge step forward. It's not easy to beat an NFL team by 17 points, even if it is the Bears.
Yeah, and the Bears sort of shot themselves in the foot down the stretch there. I've never seen an onside kick touch every person's hand on the team that was trying to recover the ball, and they still refuse to recover it. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking Eugene Cyril Smith III. Had an up and down day today, but as I mentioned a moment ago, they are in first place in the NFC West. Wild times indeed. We'll talk about that right after this.
Freddie! Surprise!
Dad!
What's going on with your son?
Wish I knew. He's got a girlfriend I've never even heard of. When I told him I wanted to spend more time with him, he said no.
It's just not a good time.
Have you considered that he hates you?
Don't sit there! Those are Christian Lacroix pillows.
So we can't sit on the couch.
Not in jeans.
All righty. If you're watching on YouTube, Breech has put on his hood, which means it is go time. We're down the stretch here. It's like you're sitting in the stands at a Seahawks game. On. So, little notes from Harry here from the Seahawks game. First 2 drives for Geno Smith, 6 of 8, 78 yards, touchdown. They had 14 points. Typical Geno. And then bad Geno showed up. Next 8 drives, 13 of 24. 2 interceptions, and woo boy, he tried to throw some bad. He looked like PJ Walker out there. He went for PJ Walker's. He went as PJ Walker for Halloween for part of that game. And then the final drive, 4 of 5, 52 yards, touchdown, and they scored there. It was an ugly game, and a game that I actually had to do a double take on because I thought they lost the game, and then I had to be reminded that they actually won the game. And these are the type of games it feels like, Brinson, that good teams win. Because you're going to have a couple of one-score games go both ways. Last year, the Vikings won every single one-score game they came in contact with. This year, it was a little different. Where are you on the Seahawks? Are they indeed the best team in the NFC West? And if so, how far can they take this thing once we get to January football?
I think the Seahawks are the most underrated team in the NFC. Maybe the NFL.
Don't hate it.
I'm trying to think who would be more underrated in the AFC. I think it might be the most underrated team in the entire NFL. Nobody really
the Bengals.
The Bengals.
No, I think the Bengals at 4-3 are properly rated.
What? They beat the Seahawks, your underrated team, in the battle of most underrated teams.
That's true.
Well, that means that they're probably going to be more highly rated than the.
No, everyone
Seahawks.
gave up on the Bengals, Brinson.
All right, continue your Seahawks. We don't need to talk about the Bengals. No one cares about that.
I mean, they have done a tremendous job drafting over the last 2 years.
True
like
that.
the offensive line play they got for those guys last year, you saw it at the end of this game where Jackson Smith and Jigba makes an awesome touchdown catch and run to get in the end zone to give them the lead, and then on the final play, that 4th and 19, I want to say, Devin Witherspoon, who is an absolute dog, incredible in the run, incredible in coverage, and incredible against the run. He goes out there and makes the pass breakup. They just had these guys that over the last couple of years, 2 years specifically, these draft classes have contributed immediately. Zach Charbonnet, the second round, I believe, running back, was making big plays down the stretch of this game. Gives him a very nice combination with Kenneth Walker, who they drafted last year. You have the offensive lineman that they pulled together, and then they signed Geno to that contract. And Geno's just a perfect fit for this team. He's like Russell Wilson before he became famous, basically. And he's like the humble, goes out there, plays in the system, makes clutch plays when he needs to, and he's got the receivers out there. I like the throwbacks, by the way. Good throwback day. The Titans throwbacks,
throwback
fantastic.
day. I love the throwbacks. Prisco Actually mentioned on Tuesday that they love those throwbacks on the podcast. But what I liked the best, Breech, was Pete Carroll's sweatshirt throwback. I really like that. So how far can this team go with Geno, Breech?
I don't think they can win the Super Bowl,
But
but
get to the Super Bowl.
the 49ers are falling apart at the seams, and there's no reason they can't win the NFC West. And you win the NFC West, maybe you get you're only one game out of the number one seed and getting a first round bye. I mean, that's the part that seems unbelievable. I think that's where Brinson is coming from with the underrated talk, because it doesn't seem conceivable the Seahawks could get the number one seed in the NFC, but they're right there. And I mean, we're 8 weeks in the season. The Seattle Seahawks are just a game out. So yeah, I mean, this team can go far. Not sure, just Geno's so streaky. That's why I don't think he can win the Super Bowl. But I mean, I could certainly see them getting to the NFC title game.
He is streaky, but I was just going to say he is streaky, but he is.
I think the thing with the Super Bowl is like the bigger problem is the AFC. You're just going to get some sort of behemoth, whether it's the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Dolphins, the Ravens, whoever it is. But the NFC, man, you look around, it's like Philly's obviously 7-1. Seattle's a 2 seed right now, 5-2. Detroit, Atlanta's the 4 seed at 4-4. Dallas, San Francisco, Minnesota, and then it's like New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and the Rams. I mean, you're not going to have to go through a bunch of good teams to get out of the NFC.
Well, we'll see. Every week we change our minds on who's good and who's not. One thing that won't change: the Panthers got to win today. I don't think unless there's a time machine in which C.J. Stroud goes back and rewrites history. Bryce Young was the best quarterback on the field, which is a wild thing to say because CJ's had a fantastic start to his season. Unfortunately, Will Levis came along in week 8 and was the best rookie quarterback. But Bryce Young, shout out to him, 22-31, 235, had a touchdown, a great touchdown pass to Tommy Tremble in the back of the end zone. Brinson, you are the Charlotte correspondent. Why don't you tell us what Bryce Young did? Because he played really well in the Miami game, took the week off. Thomas Brown called the plays, and things seemed to slow going, but they got there at the end, won that game by 2 points, 15-13.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sort of like we have to win this one effort. Like, I mean, as much as a game can be must win for an 0-6 team, this was a must win because your Bryce Young is playing against CJ Stroud. There's already all the conversations about, like, did Frank Reich want to pick CJ Stroud first overall, and David Tepper made him pick Bryce Young, et cetera, et cetera. The offensive line's still a problem. Their weapons still not great, but the defense did a good job. And look, Houston, I think Houston's a good team. CJ Stroud's been awesome. D'Amico Ryan's a very good coach. That defense has been way better than people expected. And so you have Carolina now. I think it's kind of interesting. You've got the Colts, coming out of the bye, you change the play callers. You got the Colts at home, and then you're at the Bears, Cowboys at home, but then at the Titans, at the Bucks, at the Saints, home against the Falcons. But look, this is not a good Panthers team. We can all agree on that. That is not up for debate. But the defense can slow people down, and they're going to get some questionable quarterbacks. So there's a path for the Panthers.
God, he said it.
No, where the Panthers. No. There's a weird.
Are you saying the Panthers are going to make the playoffs? Is that
no? The path thing I was going to go with was the Panthers only give up a top 10 pick to the Bears, not the first overall pick. Which I think we're really underestimating just how bad. If you give it the first overall pick and it's Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams is as good as advertised, and I don't know if he is, but like if you do that, like heads are rolling.
Here's the thing, and we say this every year. People are going to overdraft quarterbacks because you are not going to win without a quarterback. So I understand in, the 30,000-foot view why you would do it. Now, if you get the wrong guy, you get the wrong guy. But in the moment, no one knows that, and you just sort of roll with it. And next year matters, but in the sense that maybe we'll take a quarterback next year. But I literally had this thought on Saturday. Did the Titans really need to draft Will Levis if they wanted a quarterback? Because they knew Ryan Tannehill was coming back. They had him in the league, whatever. But even if they wanted a quarterback, maybe they wait till this year. Well, it turns out Will Levis had a great day. So you give up a lot to go from 9-1, no doubt about it. And maybe it does bite you. But no one is saying anything about CJ Stroud going number 2 and then the Texans trading up to number 3 to get Will Anderson and then giving up all they gave up because those guys are balling out. And that's sort of the takeaway, right?
Yeah. No, dude, if the Panthers were 3-3 and Bryce Young was playing well and was like a top. And
you're not talking about it.
What? Yeah, exactly. It's It's a non. If he wasn't like 55-1 to win offensive rookie of the year after closing as a favorite, this isn't a conversation. But the Panthers are 0-6. I'm just telling you, you can like sort of like we can be like, well, let's just see where the draft order shakes out. You get to the damn draft, and the Bears are picking first overall, or to like end up trading that pick for a ton of like assets, and it was the Panthers, and like it's just with David Tepper in charge. I think this was a very, very, very much needed win for Carolina. Like, and if you get the first one, and maybe you pop off a couple, and all of a sudden it's like you get the pressure off. And look, by the way, this division sucks. Like, it sucks. It is worse than advertised. The Falcons are 4-4 in first place. I'm just saying.
Let me just say real quick, though, the end of this game was absolutely bonkers, starting with the fact
the kicking thing. Yeah. Wow.
Well, the Panthers had literally 166 total yards the entire game going into their final possession with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They had given no one any reason to believe that they could drive the length of the field to get a game-winning field goal because their final drive started on their own 9-yard line. I'm sure the Texans were in celebration mode, like, oh, this team's going to go 3-and-out. They've done absolutely nothing. And yeah, the end of the game, I just wanted to point out because Eddie Piñeiro's out there trying to hit field goals. He hits one, but there's a penalty on Houston. He hits another one, but there's a penalty on Houston. So now he's out there trying his third game-winning field goal. Look, you get a kicker's head. You rough with them, you're blocking them, you're doing crazy stuff, but he hit all three. And it was, if you have Game Pass, go watch the final 5 minutes because it's bizarre.
Well, do you Breach on their, to your point, on the Panthers' previous 3 drives? Do you guys know how many total yards they had?
10.
11.
No. What is negative 22 plus? What is negative 22 plus 8? I believe that is negative 14. They had negative 14 yards on their 3 drives leading up to that final game-winning drive, and it was just like, they made one, and then there was the Texans were doing this like weird. Anyway, we don't have to talk about this, but as Breach pointed out, it was a crazy ending, and if Piñeiro had missed like. He had to kick a bunch. And if he pulls that one dead right, it is so freaking awkward. And he celebrated like the Panthers won the Super Bowl after it happened.
Well, it was their Super. They won a game, so that is their Super Bowl. Speaking of negatives, Tyrod Taylor, meltdown in the Meadowlands. Great headline from producer Harry. Tyrod Taylor had to leave the game with, I believe, what were called rib injuries. Before he left, he was 4 of 7 for 8 yards. And you might think that's terrible, Breach. Tommy DeVito came in. Syracuse's own Tommy DeVito.
You know he's Dave DeVito's son?
No, it's not. 2 of 7 for negative 1 yard. So fewest pass yards in a game. Way to go, Giants. You were on the scoreboard not once, but twice. 2023, negative 9. 2021, negative 6. So, Breach, is this I suppose the Jets have to feel good about this. Give me your 30-second takeaway because we can't spend too much time on what this game means because, let's be honest, it doesn't mean a lot.
Hell yeah, you feel good about it. You have a winning record with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. You did absolutely nothing for 3.5 quarters offensively, and you are now 4-3 because he pulled off a freaking miracle with 2 29-yard receptions on the final drive of regulation. The fact that field goal happened to tie the game was the most improbable thing I saw all day. If you would have told me this happened, I wouldn't have believed it. If I would have watched video, I would assume you doctored the video to make it happen. There was no way. And it started because Graham Gano, who never missed earlier in the game, never misses from close, missed a 35-yard field goal, missed a 35-yard field goal with 28 seconds left that kept the Jets in the game, made that all possible. Yes, if I'm the Jets, I am thrilled by this because you're over 500.
There's 2 great calls on this game. Andrew Catalan, one of our colleagues at NFL and CBS, he goes, this is the ugliest, best game you will ever see. And then Bob Wachusen, who works at ESPN, shout out, love Bob, Fish fan, by the way. He was doing the radio call for Jets radio, and he was like, the Jets have won. I don't really know how, but they won. And I mean, it was just like, just horrendous football. Everything that you would expect from like a modern Jets-Giants game. It just bad. But yeah, I agree with Breach. If you're the Jets, Zach Wilson, you feel like you got a chance in the playoffs.
4-3, bad weather, bad football. Going to end on a happy note, though. All right, I'll go with you, Breech, so Brinson can get his mind right. Breech VP, who you got?
Well, obviously, my Breech VP is the guy I share initials with. I'm John Breech. He's Joe Burrow. You know what? From the moment he stepped off the plane wearing an alien suit, the guy had an alien mask on with his cheesy NASA sweatshirt. It was all over for the 49ers because then he came out with an out-of-this-world performance. He completed 19 straight passes at one point. As Wilson said, one of the most efficient games in Bengals franchise history. So, of course, I'm going to give my Breech VP to a Cincinnati Bengals player after a huge Bengals win that the Bengals really needed and the Bengals got.
Brinson VP.
I will my BVP will go to man that doesn't share initials with me, but who is I love him like he's one of my family members. AJ Brown. 8 targets, 8 catches, 100. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to switch. I'm going to do dual MVPs, dual BVPs. AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. AJ Brown, 8 targets, 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. First player in NFL history to have 125 receiving yards in 6 straight games. Wild. Broke Megatron's record there. And then CeeDee Lamb. Shout out to our good friend and coworker, Dave Richard, who we had a trade in our Dynasty League this past week in which Dave sent me CeeDee Lamb and I sent him Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, and Alvin Kamara. I got like a future first-round pick and all this stuff. And I had Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and beat his pants off in this matchup this week after the trade. So CeeDee Lamb, I love you. Also, like you are a member of my family.
Yeah, I knew Breech once Brinson started thanking Dave Richards, something bad was going to happen today because never has there been a situation where Brinson thanks someone and then just didn't get there. Poor Dave.
You got to go with
by the way,
right?
That would be a good one.
Wilson.
This one's going to be even better. And you guys are missing layups left and right by not even calling out these two fine young men. Little man by the name of Russell Wilson and Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Not only did they win a game, they won it convincingly over the most overhyped, sorry football organization that needed 5 turnovers to get there. But great win for Russ. Russ was exceedingly happy after the game. Justin Simmons, I think, has 5 interceptions against Patrick Mahomes over his course of his career, which is crazy burger. I don't think it means much for the Broncos. We just talked about that being the Jets Super Bowl or the Panthers Super Bowl, excuse me. That was definitely the Broncos Super Bowl because that's as close as they're going to get this year unless they buy tickets. But anyway, MVP all around. Congratulations to those who were named tonight. You will be receiving your complimentary Pick 6 podcast sweatshirt. Look for that. That's it. That's a wrap. Week 8, Sunday Night Super Friends in the books. Don't worry. Back all next week. Trade deadline, Tuesday, 4 p.m. I think we're going to be on.
Halloween.
What happened. Halloween. Dress accordingly. In the meantime, you can check out the Pick 6 podcast all week on YouTube and NFL CBS or wherever you get your audio podcasts. Thanks to all of you who hung out tonight. Listen to the chat. We appreciate you, except for the ones Brinson was mad at. And for Brinson, for Breech.
Oh, there's people too.
For producer Harry, I'm Wilson. We will see you next week.